Hi YouTube. Human survival and thriving on Earth is mostly linked to the fact that we have the ability to utilize our surroundings, to create tools. We are not stronger than lions or bears, or faster than antelopes or horses. We can't fly, we can't swim, we are not the best climbers. The skill that really sets us apart is the ability to create and craft tools. It's a very materialistic skill, one that at first glance doesn't really seem very divine or elevated. But, as it turns out, even the Greek gods changed their mind about that, elevating the great Hephaestos to one of their own. Hera was pregnant when the gods moved to Olympus. She could not have been more satisfied. Her ambition was to bear Zeus children of such majestic power, strength, and beauty that her place as Queen of Heaven would be assured for eternity. She knew that Zeus had a roving eye, and she was determined not to let any other parts of him rove either. First, she would give birth to the greatest of the gods, a boy whom she would call Hephaestos, and then Zeus would marry her properly and submit himself forever to her will. This was her plan. The plans of the immortals, however, are as subject to the cruel tricks of Moros as are the plans of mortals. When her time came, Hera lay down and Hephaestos was born. To her dismay, the child turned out to be so swarthy, ugly, and diminutive that after one disgusted glance she snatched him up and hurled him down the mountainside. The other gods watched the wailing baby bounce off a cliff and then disappear into the sea. There was a terrible silence. So, I just read a passage from the book Mythos from Stephen Fry, which is really a recommendation if you like to read about Greek mythology. This is one of two versions of the story of Hephaestos' birth, but basically the themes are the same for both versions that I know of. The first story is the one that I just explained. Hera is trying to give birth to the first son of Zeus so that she can basically solidify her place as the queen of the world. But with these jealous intentions, a very ugly and deformed baby comes out, as it is not with pure intentions, not a holy baby, let's say. And she is so disgusted by what comes out of her that she throws the baby off Mount Olympus and it is cast away. The other story is that Hera is actually jealous of Zeus because he gave birth to a child without her, which is Athena. So she also decides to give birth to a child without Zeus, but that also goes wrong. The baby comes out deformed, and yeah. So these are basically the two versions, and there are also some differences in some stories. Hera is so disgusted by Hephaestus that she throws him down. In other stories, it is Zeus himself who decides to throw the baby off. In any case, the godly couple is not pleased with the birth based on his initial characteristics, and they cast him aside. And in most of the stories after that, Hephaestus is raised on the island of Lemnos, where he learns the skill of blacksmithing, and after that he's basically known as a great craftsman. He's very skilled in making tools and weapons, and he is oftentimes depicted as someone who is crippled. This can be linked to the fact that he was born crippled. As was mentioned, he's born deformed, but it also can be the case that he's actually crippled from the fall down from Mount Olympus. The way that Hephaestus eventually actually comes back to the gods, as he is accepted back onto Mount Olympus, varies also. There are different stories about it, but in general you can say that he manages to convince the gods that his skill and craft is so valuable that even they can benefit from it and that they cannot deny its power and value. There is a story in this book as well that explains a bit more a way of trickery, where he uses Hera's vanity as he secretly gives her a throne, a golden throne, that she sits on and is then captured and cannot stand up from it again. And in the end, they make a kind of proposal that whoever can free her of that throne gets to marry Aphrodite, so the most beautiful goddess from Olympus, the goddess of love. And then Hephaestos all of a sudden steps forward and says, "Hey, I made this throne. I can basically unbreak the spell. I can break the spell, unspell. I can break the spell." So he does it. He's accepted back to Mount Olympus, and he is to marry Aphrodite. So that is one version. But there are also other versions that more explain the fact that he got so skilled in crafting different tools, and actually a lot of the tools that the gods use, like weapons, the thunderbolts of Zeus, the chariot of Helios, they're all crafted by the great craftsman Hephaestos. So in the end, even the gods cannot deny the power and actually divine status of craftsmanship at that level. As I mentioned in the video before about Ares, I try to look into the meaning of these Greek gods in a way that they are kind of unstoppable, undeniable forces in our psyche, which in this case would mean that there is a kind of creative entity inside of us that we cannot and should not deny, something that maybe at first glance doesn't look to be something worthy of pursuing, but that in the end, all things considered, can give us really great value. And if you think about it, as I mentioned also in the intro, we as humans really rely on the fact that we can craft things, we can make tools, we can make buildings, we are a species of technology. So without that, we would really not be any more advanced than chimpanzees or a goldfish for that matter. So I wanted to share one point of view with you that I found very interesting, that I found out actually, I'm proud to say that I came to this connection by myself, and later I found that there are also some sources online that basically went through the same line of thinking. So I would say it's a legit way to look at it. And one is if we try to look at specifically the birth story of Hephaestos. So Hera tries to create life, or to create something, but not from a very pure intention, but from a jealousy or kind of greedy vanity point of view. So she created something that also turned out to be a mirror to her intention. So it's not perfect, it's actually more a broken version of reality. So she casts it aside. So it's something that is born or something that is generated out of impure intentions and is then cast aside. And that thing that is cast aside is then in the end the great craftsman, the father of all other craftsmen and tool makers and weapon makers. So why this is interesting is because it reminds me of the story of Cain and Abel from the Old Testament, where we have two people. In this case, it's not Zeus and Hera, but it's Cain and Abel, two brothers, and they're both making sacrifices to God. And Abel, in this sense, is making good sacrifices, and Cain thinks that he's also making good sacrifices, but he is not. Basically, they're not accepted by God, and he is not being granted the grace of God, and he gets angry about it. He kills his brother, so he kills his ideal, and then therefore he is also cast away, so he is banished, and it's a very similar story. He falls from the grace of the divine. And what actually happens in the story of Cain and Abel is that they say that the descendants of Cain, there's a whole line of descendants, and in the end you get to the descendant of Tubal Cain, which is the creator of weapons and tools. So it's very interesting because that is basically Hephaestos. And so I looked a little bit further around that, and if you find Hephaestos is the Greek name, and there's also a Roman name which is Vulcan, I think you pronounce it Vulcan, and there was a comparison that I found online on a website. I will link that website. They made a comparison between the name Tubal Cain and the Roman name Vulcan. And then if you understand a bit like the background of language and words, the V and the B are basically similar letters in that sense. You know that if you know some people who speak Spanish, you oftentimes cannot even distinguish the difference when they say B or V. Shout out to all the Spanish people that are watching. But the point that they're trying to make is that Tubal Cain, and Vulcan, there's not so much difference. So they suggest that based on the names, they might be hinting towards the same. And there's also a meaning in Vulcan, which is connected to volcano. Hephaestos is also often connected to volcano. Some stories even say that his great forge, where he was creating all these tools, was under one certain volcano. So he was also the god responsible for making eruptions happen and these kind of things. But in principle, I think the theory or the psychological interpretation of this story has much to do with something, well, let's say the lesson learned of something that is created with the right intentions. And in the end, you can see the story of Cain and Abel kind of stops there, as in saying that, okay, the descendant of Cain is in the end the person who creates tools and weapons, suggesting that tools and weapons are of the same nature, which is kind of evil. But if you go back to the Greek story, you see actually you have the fall of Hephaestos or Vulcan, who learns from the people. He's the creator of tools and weapons, but they can actually be used for good things. He also gives it to the gods that in the end then are the divine principle. So it's a bit more ambiguous whether weapons or tools are necessarily good or evil. I think it's in how you use them. And so there is a way in which you have this tendency in your psychology that maybe creating for the sake of creating or creating with the wrong intentions can lead to a fall from grace, let's say. But if you create with the right intentions, you can actually use that and climb up and create something close to or equal to a divine force. So, and I think that's a very beautiful way to look at it. Creating for creating's sake might not be the goal, or creating to be admired by other people. In that case, you will create something deformed and ugly. But you do see in all the stories about Hephaestos that because he has been cast down, he has this natural humbleness and kindness about himself. He's not trying to show off. He just wants to create and be part of a family, be part of a community, and he wants to create. And that's the core of his desire. And other than that, he's a pretty humble and kind spirit. What can we actually learn from this? How can we apply it? We know that Hephaestos was burdened by flaws from birth, which was something that he did not have any control over. But he wasn't a victim. He used his craftsmanship to earn his way up again. And I think the lesson is that we all have flaws, but we shouldn't let that stop us, but maybe even use that in the things that we create in the world, and just try by creating to create value for ourselves, for other people, and earn our way towards Mount Olympus if we can. And I really love, there's a very nice quote from Kurt Vonnegut, who is a well known writer. I think he wrote Slaughterhouse 5, something like that it's called. And the quote is: nobody will stop you from creating. Do it tonight, do it tomorrow. That is the way to make your soul grow. And I think that the thing that can really save you in a way is to realize that every human being has this inner force and drive and ability to create something with humble intentions. You don't have to be an artist. You can also decide, I'm going to make a coffee table, or I'm going to fix some things around the house, which is also a way of creating, or you're just going to make a drawing for yourself. You know, there are various ways in which you can create something, and you can actually nowadays also pretty easily take up a new hobby or something like that, learn a skill that you don't know yet, spend some time and really work on learning this craft, this skill. Um, I think this is a nice option for people to realize, like, hey, I can actually learn more than I know right now, and I can create stuff that wasn't there before, or I can discover patterns in reality that I hadn't discovered before. And I think that that is the practice that I would try to implement based on the stories and the lessons learned from the great craftsman Hephaestos. Alright, guys, this was it for today. I hope you liked it. I'm pretty happy about the new setup that I have. I got two cameras, I got a pretty nice microphone right here, and I just tried to make it look a little bit more casual and a bit more professional. Uh, Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you like also these kinds of psychological interpretations of the Greek myths. Are there any specific gods or myths that you would like me to talk about next? And if not, also let me know why. I'm just trying out new things, and I don't want to make it too preachy. There are also a lot of things that I still don't know, but I was just trying to have kind of my minds about this topic put into this diary of mine, which is this YouTube channel. Um, I hope if you're watching you enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like, and above all, have a nice day.